Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. Longtime listeners are going to know that my voice is just a little bit shaky, but that's okay. We soldier on, right? It's most important just to continue with these fabulous discussions. So please join me in welcoming Thomas Dunlap to our program today. Welcome, Thomas. How are you?
Thanks, Deb, and feel free to call me Tom because it'll save you a circle and save your voice.
Save me a little bit, and I'm married to a Tom, so that will help.
Oh, good choice.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Thomas Dunlap is a managing partner at Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig, DBL, a law firm he co-founded in 2001 and grew into an internationally renowned venture that is 80 plus attorneys strong and has a presence in 14 locations across the United States and the United Kingdom. After prosecuting, Tom moved to private practice, disillusioned by the workings of law after working for a private asset protection law firm. Thomas embarked on his entrepreneurial journey with DBL, establishing it as a law firm based on a distinct, outcome-focused professional model. DBL is active across law practices and industries, including aerospace, banking, firearms, entertainment, and retail. So again, Tom, welcome.
Thanks very much, Deb. Good summary. Appreciate you having me on the show, and I'm here to converse and answer any questions you'd like. Did you want to start with the background, or?
Let's start with the background. So tell us a little bit more about how it is that you decided that this is your passion in life.
So, and I read a book recently in the last 2 years called Ikigai, and I don't know if you've heard of this Japanese concept, blue zones and Okinawa, and how everybody lives this. And I think it is my passion. It's the thing that people value me for and I get paid for and I feel that I'm good at. And you find that little center of the Venn diagram, right? Anyway, all that aside, so how I ended up here is I was an English major who went into banking after college after trying to act in Manhattan for a couple of years and hated, was just getting burned out, went to law school, finished law school, prosecuted. Then I went to a private firm, hated that. I actually quit that job. I enlisted in the Army as a private. I went to Fort Benning, then I went to OCS, and I did a little time in the Army. I was a cavalry officer, I was a reconnaissance scout platoon leader, and then ultimately went back to law and transitioned into the National Guard for the rest of my service commitment, so a total of 9 years. While I was doing that, I started a firm with a friend of mine who was I was a recon scout, and I met him in law school, and it turned he was in the 20th Special Forces Group, and we started our own law firm. And that was 2001, 3 years ago. So that's the idea behind it was we both hated the firm we were working at, not because the law we did was bad and not because necessarily the people we worked for were bad, but it was the way that everything worked, that the partners were kind of angry and unhappy with their lives. So they would yell at us, the associates, where they would, be kind of pedagogical with their clients and talk down to them. And so we're like, let's not have a law firm like that. We've seen too much death and destruction in the real world because we're both ex-Army dudes. Like, let's have a law firm where we come to work and we're happy to be there and our clients are happy to talk to us. And part of that, right, is practice choice too. And I think people need family law lawyers and DUI lawyers. I'm kind of in a field where for the most part, since it's intellectual property and government contracts and business stuff, not everybody's happy all of the time, but a lot of the time you're getting successful outcomes for businesses where they're really happy. So I kind of chose a field of law which lends itself to those kind of outcomes as well. And that supports kind of how my passion continues to grow and build. And in particular, intellectual property, why I like that so much is that every single case is different. So I'll have a case about a bunch of water balloons that you tie to the end of a hose and they fills up 100 and they tie off. And next week I'll have a case about an airplane's engine. And then the following week, it'll be a trademark dispute between a national restaurant chain and a local chain of restaurants. So every case is so different, and you learn so many things that aren't law that you have to learn to do the case. And so it's just been nonstop. It's a kind of a lifelong passion to learn stuff. And that's what I've really, really enjoyed about the practice area. Growing the practice is another thing, and a whole different passion and part of my passion. But that's the background, I think, in a nutshell. And now I'm here, and I'm teaching as a professor at my old college, intellectual property, not a surprise, and continuing to grow and work with lawyers at my firm to create kind of a happy workplace and a good law firm. So
I love it. Well, and obviously in many cases, and maybe all, it's a virtual office, since you've got people, in several different places.
Most of our lawyers are non-virtual, which so they're about, of the 80 or so attorneys, about 50 of them are in the office most of the time.
Okay.
We have flex work schedules in different offices. So Tyson's Corner, Leesburg, Virginia, and Chicago, the 9 lawyers there are pretty much in every day, all of them. It's just part of their office culture.
Okay.
So our virtual, some of our attorneys, especially during COVID, so we had a number of attorneys in the Richmond office who, when we had a building and an office there, and they one moved to Kansas, one moved to Texas. They just moved during COVID to wherever their families were, I guess. And they're still working for us. But we've turned a lot of people into virtual lawyers. Seattle is a physical office with lawyers sitting in it. So there are probably about 10 or 12 attorneys at the firm that are mostly virtual. They do come to our firm meetings, or if we have a big case, they have to, come to the case if it's a big litigation case. But yeah, we're mostly non-virtual. And I honestly, as much as I love the idea of a virtual economy, there's a lot of value in face time with people. And I sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but you get so much more from interacting with somebody in person.
Yeah, you walk into their office and you say, tell me about what you did last night. And, oh, by the way, what about this on the case?
Well, it's just a personal relationship, right? How can you have a relationship with somebody through a screen like this? You don't know what they smell like or what they're wearing below their collarbone.
Right. Yeah, we only dress from
so we're only dressing for Zoom. We're dressing for like the top 1/4 or 1/3 of our body. So it and their body movements and their motions and how they interface with you in person is so much different than over Zoom. I also think, and I don't know if you'll agree, because you've done 980 of these, or something.
You're 987.
987 of these. I think that this is kind of a flat environment, right? Like I don't. There's a connection, but it's not a real. I mean, we're talking to each other through a piece of glass and another piece of glass over a wire, and I don't get the same connection with people long term with a single cocktail meeting or a single coffee or a single lunch. I have a connection with that person for years for some reason compared to this, even when I meet people over and over again on Zoom.
Right.
So
yeah, body language does so much. And I think so many people discounted that. But we pick up on that. And that I think is a big part of it. Plus, when we're on the screen, we're looking ahead, we're focused, we're doing all those things. And when we're talking with people at a networking event or in an office or whatever, we're looking around, we're, doing whatever. And it's all of those other subtle things that really do layer in to make the relationship.
Yeah. Well, and also, so there's a weird kind of focus. You're right, with Zoom. Like you are kind of like, okay, I'm on a Zoom. I need to look at this and I'm on TV. I've got to be conscious about being on TV, as opposed to sitting with someone in person and not worrying about scratching your head or like twiddling your thumbs or whatever, because it's more natural. The other thing I think about Zoom, as I think about these, when we do associate mentor cohorts. So we'll have like 6 or 7 associates in each cohort, and we'll do this twice a year, and they'll go through kind of a business development training. Anyway, whatever it is, but they're all on the screen. And some of them, there's dogs in the background, there's things going on. There's all these things, and you're not there in that environment. You don't know if down here, while they're looking at you, they have their phone right here and they're playing
Right.
Clash of Clans or like who knows, right? Or
hmm
whatever. They're
Or
playing
worse, they turn their video off.
yeah, or so we don't if they're my
You
associates, they
require
don't get
it.
to do
I love
that.
it.
Yeah, so that's kind of your video. It's actually our firm's policy when we're meeting with each other. Turn your video on
Right.
because it's just
hmm
respectful
hmm
to show you're paying attention.
hmm
And we tell people to do it with clients too. But if our
hmm
clients don't do it, we're in a service industry, Deb. Our
Right. Yeah.
clients
They're
take what they
paying
want to
you.
do.
You can't
Yeah.
really, now you can gently suggest, some
Yep.
things like that. But yeah. And, it's funny. I interviewed a speaker who speaks about how introverts cope in business.
Right.
And I asked her, I said, is this easier or harder? And, and thinking that she was going to say it was easier
Right.
because you've got that glass that's there and the
Right.
wires and all that. And she said it's actually harder because she has to focus the whole time.
I
And
see.
if she was in an in-person meeting, she can kind of go off in a corner. She can, she doesn't have to
It's
actively
true.
participate. And she said, yeah, she hated COVID, and she said it was really a challenge for her because it was so stressful to always feel like she was, as you said, on TV.
Well, and it makes sense. So
hmm
I used to do a panel every year at Sundance Film Festival
hmm
for AMC Networks owned Sundance, and they had me
Oh
host
my
an
gosh.
independent film panel
hmm
on legal issues. They
hmm
flew me to Sundance for free, and I got to ski. It was
Cool.
great. But yeah, for like 7 years until the council that did that for me went to another
Right.
network.
And now I think they want to move it to Georgia. But anyhow.
Really? Well, anyway, so but my point is on those panels, they had these TV cameras, like six of them, and I
hmm
had these people on a stage.
hmm
I get the same feeling when I'm
hmm
on a Zoom that
hmm
I had when I was on a television, when I have a camera. And I don't know if you've seen people.
hmm
So I've had my law partners film promo videos,
hmm
and some of my partners, I'll be sitting here talking to them like I'm talking to you,
hmm
natural as can be.
hmm
But as soon as you put a camera on them, they're like,
Oh, they're like,
"Hello, my name is John.
hmm
I am a lawyer." I'm like, dude,
hmm
what's just talk? It's
right.
okay. But they
hmm
can't. And they're like,
hmm
okay, I will talk normally.
hmm
So I think there's some magic effects psychologically to
hmm
this camera for people who are naturally
right.
introverts. I think
hmm
you're right. Anyway, I
hmm
don't know. I'm not a
We
psychologist.
digressed. We're
I'm a
covering every
lawyer.
subject.
Right. I used to shoot people for a living and now I sue people for a living. So
Yeah,
I don't
hey.
know. The wrong person to ask.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Well, as the one of the founders of the law firm, I talked to a lot of business owners who one of the things they say is, they have this great business, but when they're the boss, they don't get to do what they really enjoy anymore. So do you still get to be involved in the law and litigating and things, or are you more of kind of that
No,
oversight partner?
I had that problem and you have to get out of your own way. So
Mhm.
7 or 8 years ago, I had that problem. And I got my MBA and I used a lot of my MBA time to figure out what was wrong with why lawyers were so bad at business. They
Mm.
made lots of money, got paid tons of money,
Mhm.
but they were more than 50% of the lawyers in the US are in firms of nine or smaller, more than
Mm.
half.
Makes sense.
And
Mhm.
but it's not efficient, right? There's
Right.
no economy of scale there.
Mhm.
And the other thing is everybody in a firm that size is doing their own bookkeeping or
Mhm.
managing a bookkeeper, their own
Right.
accounting or managing
Mhm.
it, or their
Mhm.
HR, their malpractice renewals, they're ordering paper, they're moving desks,
Mhm.
they're doing all the crap.
Mhm.
So the way I got out of my own way is I said, we need a professionally managed firm.
Mhm.
I now have, and we have had for a few years now, a CEO, a CFO, a
Mhm.
CTO, and a CMO. And
Mhm.
none of those people are lawyers. And at first, my law partner's like, you are insane.
Mhm.
And I
They're going to run
eventually,
us into the ground. They don't know what they're doing.
you don't want doctors flying airplanes
Mhm.
just because they're doctors. I mean, if they
Mhm.
become a good pilot, I'm a pilot and I
Mhm.
can appreciate that. But you don't want people doing something just because they're smart people.
Mhm.
And so just because lawyers are smart, and I see this time and time again because we acquire firms, that's one of
Mhm.
our big models, right? Is we have a
Mhm.
lateral firm. Hopefully we have a firm of three coming in, another firm of five coming in
Cool.
the next 8 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, we've been working with them for a while, but when a firm comes in, you realize that these attorneys, and they all are like this, have been running their own shop
Mhm.
and they're proud of it, but they're spending, and I'm on the Managing Partners Conference of Virginia.
Mm.
And so it's the big firms, Hutton and McGuire Woods, and it's the little firms that are like 10 lawyers. And all of them are like, yeah, I spend 60 hours a week billing and 60 hours a week managing the firm. And always say you're crazy.
Right. Because there's no life.
You don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So at a smaller firm, it's hard because you
Mm-hmm.
need the economy of
Mm-hmm.
scale to be able to afford those professional people.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some things you can do. So that I've proselytized that. So even if you don't join my practice or you're not in my field, say you're a
Mm-hmm.
domestic relations lawyer or a
Mm-hmm.
personal injury lawyer, you still don't have to be the one who runs the business aspects of your firm,
Mm-hmm.
even though you're smart and you think you
Mm-hmm.
can. There are other people that can do it for a lot less dollars than
Right.
your bill an
Mm-hmm.
hour.
Right.
If I'm $850 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
why am I doing a job that a CFO
Mm-hmm.
can do for $300 an hour?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Right.
sounds like a lot, but it's a lot less than my
Mm-hmm.
$850.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's my point. Anyway,
And they're going to do it better. I mean, that's the
they
thing,
are
because
because it's their
they
job.
know that, yeah, they know that field. We don't try for the most part, especially once you're in business, to do our own taxes, right? Because that gets really complicated.
No.
You know, I do not change the oil in my car. I'm not even exactly sure how to raise the hood, right?
Yeah.
I pay people for that expertise.
Right.
And that's the important thing is we need to be able to do what we love.
Yes.
I have a producer for this podcast who does she does all of the things. Now, could I do everything she does? Of course. But she does all of the things that detract from me being able to do what I want to do. And
Yeah.
she loves it. And that's the other thing is she loves doing it.
Well, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is what I am trying to literally create my life, and I tell everyone to create their life.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do some law, the
Mm-hmm.
cases and clients and things that I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do some interaction with the firm. So I like to do business development,
Mm-hmm.
especially working with my law partners to make their businesses better,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I do very successfully.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always stay at the firm. It's like, wow, I have so much work now. Um, but I really enjoy that. And I also
Mm-hmm.
enjoy trying to create something that is really hard to create
Mm-hmm.
because law, maybe this is not a secret. I don't think it is. It's not a secret amongst lawyers or studies that the American Bar Association does. But law is a tough profession emotionally and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
The
No
instances
matter
of
what the field
alcoholism,
of practice is.
yeah, I mean, actually, I think doctors are the only one. Dentists beat everybody for some reason, and then doctors and then lawyers. Those are
Mm-hmm.
like the three
Mm-hmm.
highest instances of like substance abuse, alcoholism,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to me crazy. I don't know if crazy is a politically correct word, but it's
Silly.
it's silly. Sure, it's insane. I don't know what I'm allowed to say anymore. Good
Mm-hmm.
grief. It's insane. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to say that. It's literally insane that
Mm-hmm.
that's the case because these are very highly respected professions. People automatically, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer. People are like, wow, that's impressive. And you get paid a lot for it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's the worst in all of the things that are bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, so a lot of what we are doing at the firm involves fixing that. We do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of pro bono stuff. We do a lot of stuff that makes people feel good in their heart. We really try.
Mm-hmm.
We have tons of non-pro bono, like we do the house building thing. What is that? Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we do all of those things at the firm. We do litter pickups like
Mm-hmm.
nationwide at all our offices on the
Mm-hmm.
same day. There's a day for that. We trying to do, and I know these things sound silly and small, but all those silly and small things bring people together, and
Yes.
it makes office life a lot better
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
it's not even just the cause; you're
Mm-hmm.
bonding with the people
Mm-hmm.
that you work with, which would be hard if we were all 100% virtual.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, it is that teamwork of getting together and accomplishing something that doesn't pertain to the office. Obviously, for some people it is building a house. For some it's, hey, we're going to play softball. All of those various things, and when companies do away with that, even if it's just, hey, we're not even going to have birthdays. We're not going to celebrate birthdays in the office.
Right.
Yeah. It becomes the place you go to work.
It becomes like
not
Severance.
the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you watched Severance?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's an Apple TV series. I don't know. It's a little slow, but it's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is you go to work
Mm-hmm.
and your out self is severed mentally from your in self. So you
Ah.
don't know what happens when you're not at the office. You don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And in the office, you don't know who your out self is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an insane, like George Orwell
Right.
institution
it's
that
very
they're working for.
different, separate worlds.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I think the reality of today is that's like 1954 mentality. The reality
Mm-hmm.
of today is your personal life, and we acknowledge this at the firm, and your
Mm-hmm.
office life merge. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to work from home a couple days a week, and we have that policy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to do that, and you're going to do your laundry in between calls or work or
Mhm.
whatever, you've got to make sure that you're on call for those things
Right.
too. So
Mhm.
so blend those things. That's fine.
Mhm.
We realize that and recognize it,
Mhm.
but be responsible about it. So
Right.
anyway, yeah. So that's my 5 cents on those things. I just law is one of those things. I don't know if you know this. Can you guess when the first bar exam was administered in the history of the world?
A
Like
long
how?
time ago. I bet it was a
So
really long time ago.
you would think 1880s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. First law school in the United States that was affiliated, William and Mary of 1770
Mhm.
something, 1779.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, before that, lawyers, literally lawyers for
You
all
just
of
said,
time,
I want to do this.
they were business people who
Mhm.
went to court and
Mhm.
listened to other people talk
Mhm.
and then offered for money to speak on behalf of other people.
Mhm.
In the UK, actually, they have a thing called Mackenzie's friend. You can still do it. I
Mhm.
accidentally did it in a UK case once. I was a lawyer for this person in a California federal case, copyright case. Went to the UK. I was sitting in the back, and our client had no barrister with them, which you have to have.
Mhm.
And the judge is like, "Are you Mr. Dunlap?" I was like, "Yes." I had gone to
Yes.
the restroom on the way in, and I was
Mhm.
late. And I
Mhm.
was like, "I am." He's like, "Come forward." I was like, "I'm not admitted here. My
Mhm.
malpractice." He's like, "Well, your client has said you're his Mackenzie's friend." No idea what that was. But
Mhm.
apparently, in the UK, any human being, non lawyer, can go
Mhm.
be a lawyer for anybody.
So friend of the court type of thing.
It is. It is like a well, friend of the court is amicus, where you're usually it's a brief and you're just giving the court.
Okay. Okay.
You're not representing anyone technically when you're writing an amicus brief,
Okay.
which is where the friend of the court comes from.
Mhm.
A Mackenzie's friend is literally a lawyer who's not a lawyer.
Right. Somebody named
Interesting
Mackenzie said,
concept.
"Hey, I want you to come up and do this," and it went from
It
there.
must have been some Scottish guy who did it back in the day. I don't know the story
Mhm.
of that. Probably that sort of stuff. Because like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to speak for you whether you like it or not.
Yes. Yes. Come on. I was going to say matey. That wasn't right.
Yeah, but my point is, lawyers literally for all of history were just business people,
Right.
and they were not lawyers until the early 1900s. They
Mhm.
just were people who tried to figure out a way to make money by
Mhm.
doing this. And now we're so formalized,
Mhm.
and we've created our own prison. Anyway,
Mhm.
I went off on a tangent there. Sorry.
That's all right. And there's obviously good reasons for a lot of that. I mean, you want to make sure that the person you are working with is educated, does know what they're doing. All of these, just like, a medical doctor. I want to know that they went to medical school. Now, if I'm going to look at their diplomas. I might kind of wonder about some of the places, but I want to at least see that they went to college.
Right.
And then we want to know, okay, if you have a specialty, how many hours have you put into that? All of those various things.
If somebody's operating on your brain, a
Mhm.
neurosurgeon, you don't want their degree to be from the University of Haiti and
No.
they're in their second year in the United States and
Mhm.
they've passed some medical. I mean, you don't want that. I mean, I
Mhm.
know there are probably people, I don't know if
Right.
that's a real university. I picked a place that nobody's from,
Mhm.
probably. There's a doctor right now in the
Mhm.
US. But I think the same is true of law. I mean,
Mhm.
we certainly look at if you didn't go to an ABA accredited law
Mhm.
school, which in many states,
Mhm.
including Virginia, you can't even sit and take the bar if you didn't.
Mhm.
States you can.
Mhm.
California, you can. You don't have to go to law school. In California, you can read the law,
Mhm.
and you can. Anyway, I won't go into what that is. But I think that standards are useful.
Mhm.
But I also think lawyers need to get away from the idea that they are the be all and end all of all
Mhm.
knowledge
Right. Mhm.
about what they're doing. But
Mhm.
they do have to be knowledgeable. Anyway, I don't know
Mhm.
where I'm going with that.
Right.
So sorry. Go ahead, Deb.
That's okay. Well, but I was just thinking, from the consumer. I mean, we do look at, oh, he went to Harvard, or whatever it is. And
Well,
we don't always even know, what is Harvard Law School. We just assume Harvard Law School is really good because we've always been told.
it's
Um,
ranked well,
yeah,
but I will tell you,
but
I've had
mhm,
experiences with Harvard lawyer. I
mhm,
have an associate who went to Harvard who is amazing,
mhm.
and I have an associate who went to Harvard who is okay,
Like with any
but
school. Mhm,
not as good as an associate who went to University of Oklahoma. I think he
right.
went there. He is as good as the guy who went to
Mhm,
Harvard.
mhm,
So a lot of it is, I think, a lot of, and Harvard sets a certain standard, right? They
mhm,
had to get in and they had to
mhm.
graduate, but it
Right.
doesn't mean they're going to maintain that standard. And
No.
I hope that associate that is the other one isn't listening, or the two associates are looking at each other trying to guess
Yeah.
which
Ooh,
one is
is
which.
he talking
Maybe they
about
want.
you? Yeah. Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh oh.
Um,
Anyway.
but yeah, I mean, it's we do look at those, and but we look at that in business too, right? How long has somebody been in business? Is it something that needs certified? You know, we had a deck put on last year to our house, and we got 4 different quotes, and it was amazing the people we dealt with. You know, I had the one guy who, now it's in the back of the house, you cannot see, you know, the area, and he said, I don't need to come see it. I'll just, yeah. And I'm like, how can you give me a quote if you don't know what it's going to be like?
Yeah.
You know, I asked all of them for their licenses and their insurance, proof of insurance, and 2 couldn't do it. And of
Wow.
course they were off the list. I mean, that was, and now
Yeah.
I know that there are people who are obviously going to pay that because they're going to charge less, but there's a liability thing. But then I remember one of them, I said, now, do you apply for the building permit or do I? You know, I just wasn't sure who did that. And his response was, it's in the back of the house, so you don't need it. And he went off the list. I was like, no, no. And of course, the one we went with was the one that had all the certifications, had the references, all of those things that you want to see in order to know this is going to be a good place to put my money.
And he probably cost a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm.
The others
He
gave
did.
you quotes. And so that is also an axiomatic of everything in the world. You get what you pay for.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And I think, so here's another thing I'll throw out there that's a little controversial, but it's not really, it's data backed, right? So the higher your hourly rate is as a lawyer, and there are empirical studies that show this in spades, the more your clients will listen to you and respect your advice, and it's the more credence your client will lend to everything you do and say to them, which sounds crazy because I've had partners in the past say, well, I need to get my rates lower so I can get the work.
Right. So I can get more clients. And
but my point is if you, and here's another math problem for you. If my rate's $800 an hour and my partner's rate's $400 an hour, how much work do I have to do in 1 hour to do as much work as he has to do? I have to do half as much work.
Right.
I mean,
or he does twice as much.
Every 2 hours he does, I'm doing an hour. And if you add that up over the course of a year, that's a lot. If you're doing 1,500 hours a year, I'm doing 750 and making the same amount of hourly billable. It's just a lot. So I'm going to do better work. And that person's, I don't know. There is a book, I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, that has a lot of these studies published in it. It's all service professionals. So service professionals that are cutting the rate to get clients in are making a huge mistake and doing a disservice to themselves.
Right.
I preach this to my partners all the time. Anyway.
Well, and we talk about that a lot here on the program, especially because in many cases, women will undervalue ourselves, you know, for whatever reason. And, you know, or we think, well, you know, I haven't been at it as long, therefore I can't charge as much, or I'm going to give discounts, all of these various things. And of course, especially when you're starting out, you need clients. So sometimes you have to do some things that you're not wild about. But it is, you know, we also, you know, we don't, when we have not paid for it, we don't see the value in it. I remember years ago, I worked in a PR firm, and the partner, and this was, you know, I think Al Gore had invented the internet, but we didn't really use it a lot. And so, you know, we didn't have our rates or things like that, but he never published rates. And I remember one of the things that he taught us all was charge what the market will bear. And I remember thinking, and he said, if you're working for a nonprofit, they cannot pay you as much. If you are working for a doctor, a lawyer, somebody who charges hundreds of dollars an hour, if you do not also charge them a high rate, they don't see the value in you.
That's true.
And I love that, you know, and it is a challenge because we want the business, we need the business, we got to get the clients. But yeah, I mean, you can end up being that hamster in a wheel chasing the $50 an hour or less when you could have said 500.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, in law, there is an experience factor. So every one of our rates, your first to third year associate, or one rate. If you're a 20 plus year partner with relevant experience in the field, you're at another rate. There's an interesting matrix. You can find it online called the Laffey matrix for lawyers. It's what the federal district courts in the DC metro area use as a rate basis when awarding fees in cases, this matrix.
Okay.
This last.
Makes
So it gives you
sense.
an idea, and it changes every 6 months. It's updated by the DOJ or whoever updates it. And it's a really good marker, but they have criteria. So they have 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years associates. Then they have partner 10 or less, partner 10 to 19, and then 19 plus. So they have all these categories, and then they have little multipliers, experience in subject matter, like multiplier 1.05. So it's interesting. There's a you have to have a method to your madness. But I would so anyway, the point is, I think I agree with you. People do tend to undervalue their services when they're setting their own rates, and certain circumstances for different rates. I will say on the nonprofit thing, most nonprofits, you're right, but remember things like Americans for Prosperity, the Koch brothers charity. That's a nonprofit.
I worked for the American Cancer Society, one of the biggest nonprofits in the world, right? We had a profit sharing plan.
Yeah. There are some big nonprofits out there that can afford high rates.
Right.
So NRA is a nonprofit thing, technically. So.
Well, and I always tell people, not for profit does not mean no profit. They have to make money. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things.
It means that they can't benefit from the money that they make as shareholders. Yeah, I know. I explain this over and over again. Yeah.
It gets complicated. Well, speaking of some legal questions, I guess we should actually talk about some of that. So, I'm a consultant, and I know this question comes up a lot with consultants, and that is intellectual property.
Right.
What is a description of intellectual property?
So, and I will put on my professor hat for 2 seconds here. So you can't describe intellectual property as one thing.
Okay.
So there are types of intellectual property, and people get these confused. So there are ideas, things you invent, like a ballpoint pen or an iPhone, things that do things. Those are patentable.
Okay.
So that's patents. There are brands. So the Power Hour, hopefully you've trademarked that.
It is. Oh, yes. The Business Power Hour is trademarked.
So it's trademarked in association with offering podcast services or whatever it is, your services. So brands are something like that, a name or a logo or a sound or a smell even, but you can trademark smell, that's associated with a product or a brand. And it is derived, that association as the result of the owner. And then you have copyright. And copyright, people are like, of course, it's intellectual property. That's every written text, every piece of music, every source code in a computer that somebody writes a program, a website can be copyrighted, all those things. What people don't get is that you can protect ideas with copyright. You can't protect expression with patents, and you can't protect brand with either of them, only with trademark. So when somebody copyrights their book, it doesn't mean that I can't read your book about the Power Hour and business success, and I could use only what I've read in your book and rewrite your book myself, and I could do that, even though you have a copyright on it. So, and the other thing to know about copyright is it has to be registered for you to use it effectively in the United States.
Right.
We do have the Berne Convention. You own it when you make it, but you can't sue anyone ever since 20.
Yeah.
Case the Fourth Estate came out the Supreme. Anyway, and then the third kind of intellectual property you should be aware of, especially as a consultant, are trade secrets. And those are non-registered things that you actually get business value from that you keep secret. So that, in a nutshell, is intellectual property. There's some other things that people leave off the list all the time. They think of those 4 things, or maybe they don't even think of those 4. They think of copyright, trademark, and patent. But trade secrets is huge. Kernels, whatever spices, and Coke's formula are trade secrets.
Right.
If we had patented them, if they had, we'd all know what they were right now, because patents expire in 20 years. So the other things are contract rights. So if you have a non-solicitation, a non-disclosure, a non-compete, any of those things, those are intellectual property that are owned by companies, those rights. Now, we'll see what happens. He has proposed banning all non-competes in the United States. I don't know if you've seen this.
I saw that.
It's being challenged right now in Texas, where they think they have a good shot at winning because an overreach of the constitutional powers of the executive. I won't get into the whole argument. It's interesting. But my point is, those things are all intellectual property. So that great bundle of stuff is intellectual property. I guess if you were to summarize it, it's an intangible right that you can own. Right. I mean, I guess there are other intangible rights you can own, like an easement or something, but it's intellectual property is all the things I do.
Right. And we mentioned the Business Power Hour is trademarked. I went through the process several years ago, thought I was smart enough to do it on my own. And then the trademark office came back because the Business Power Hour were all very common terms, obviously. And they wanted a lot more than I knew what to do with. And I hired this very smart attorney to take care of it for me. But the reason I did it, and the reason I tell people that if you are doing something like this, is to keep somebody else from borrowing it, whether on purpose or on accident. And there's, since we got the trademark, and it's been several years, and I was really surprised that nobody had it. I mean, it's kind of like, really?
It is kind of surprising.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and
it almost,
and there's only been one time where I have had to politely tell somebody, don't do that. They had started a new podcast. And they called it the Business Power Hour. And it was a podcast. I mean, that was the thing, is it was very direct. And so I contacted my attorney, and she was so sweet. She said, try it yourself first. Then if they don't comply, we'll write the cease and desist. So in other words, I'm going to save you some money, is what she said. And so I contacted the gentleman, and I said, I'm sure you didn't know that I already own the trademark. And, poor thing, he panicked. Next thing I know, I've got a letter from his attorney, but it was all very civil and very nice. And of course, I had the paperwork to back it up. I had the legal right to say, you can't do that. And, and so his attorney came back and said, we have stopped. We have already changed the name. We did it immediately upon your notification. And, and he said, but we have a favor. He did several YouTube videos, like several years ago, where he used that name. And he said, we can't edit that out. Do we have your permission to still use those, as long as we never do it again? And I thought, and it was like 3 videos. I mean, this was not a huge thing. And I, you looked and they'd been viewed like 10 times. I mean, this was not something big. So I went ahead and gave permission for it. But it is, the Business Power Hour. I mean, we're going to hit 1,000 episodes this year. It is very much something that I want to protect. And I tell people, you have to do that. Your company name, your service that you provide, and now, was it inexpensive? I mean, it was, I kind of went, ooh, when she told me how much, but I also thought exactly what you said before. I'm getting what I paid for. She's going to do it well. She's going to do it, as fast as the system does. Right. Because, it's a little slow, but I also knew it was worth it to protect myself. And that was the decision that was the most important.
So I will tell you, Deb, while you were talking, I quickly did a Google search. You have another podcast called the Biz Power Hour, which you absolutely could send a cease and desist.
Yeah, because they're pretty close.
It is. Yeah. So remember, trademark, for there to be confusion between 2 marks, the standard is something called in re DuPont. And the standard is, just remember this phrase and you understand all of trademark law. Is there a reasonable likelihood of confusion as to the source or origin of goods and services in the relevant marketplace? Biz Power Hour, Business Power Hour, confusing. So if you go to bizpowerhour.com, it is a web show focused on helping business owners. Anyway, so take a look at that. You may want to send them a little notice. And the Baker's Chamber of Commerce has a Business Power Hour too.
Well, and I've seen that a lot. There's a lot of seminars, and I'm like, ugh, that's not worth going.
Let me tell you something though. As a trademark owner, you have a duty to enforce your trademark, or somebody
else can say you didn't.
Right, and it's called latches. So if you sit on your rights, you lose your rights. We have a case right now, a pretty big case that's pending in federal court, so I can talk about it, where this company that's been around for 75 years has a trademark. Our client that's been around for 15 years filed a trademark 8 years ago, and this other company didn't object to it. And last month, this other company sued my client out of the blue and said, you can't use trademark. And we said, well, we not only have a registered trademark as well, but it's become incontestable, which you can file for after 5 years, Section 15 affidavit. And latches, you were on actual notice. We filed this trademark 8 years ago. So we coexisted with you. You can't stop us.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of the problem with all law.
Mhm.
Every piece of law everywhere is the cost.
Mhm.
So everybody, huge mushroom company, sorry, I should have said what it was, but anyway, huge company
Mhm.
versus smaller company, not
Right.
tiny company,
Mhm.
big enough to defend. So that's
Mhm.
good. But my point is, a lot of law gets settled because one company is really big
Mhm.
and spends money, a lot of money.
Mhm.
Even if they're wrong on the
Mhm.
law, they win.
Right.
So I don't know if
Yeah. I
you've
mean,
run
look
it
at
across that,
companies
but that
that
happens.
had similar names to, say, Walmart.
Right.
You
Well,
know? Mhm.
yeah, Walmart's going to win every time. But I
Mhm.
mean, so Walmart's unique. There is a special doctrine for famous brands. So
Mhm.
if you run across, so you, the Pet Business Power Hour, if I wanted to be the Business Power Hour and I was an IT company, I don't know why I would
Mhm.
call it that. It's a terrible name for an IT company, not for
Mhm.
what you do. It's great for what you do. But
Mhm.
for an IT company, I could do that
Mhm.
because you're not a famous brand and you're in a different class of goods or services. And
Mhm.
consumers who buy my IT services in the DC metro area
Mhm.
aren't going to be confused with your podcast. They're
Right.
not going to think we're the same thing.
Mhm.
But if I started calling I don't know, let me think of something Walmart doesn't do. What does Walmart not do? They don't provide legal services. If I
Right.
called my law firm, the Walmart legal firm,
Mhm.
they could sue me and they could
Mhm.
stop me and they could win on trademark rights because
Mhm.
they're a famous mark.
Mhm.
So certain marks where everybody in the United States
Right.
knows what it
Right.
is, trademarks are
Kleenex. I
territorial.
think Kleenex was one. Xerox,
Kleenex.
right? Mhm.
Well, Kleenex and Xerox are examples of potential genericide. So that's
Mhm.
a different issue. So things like Nike, Coca-Cola. Now, Kleenex and
Right.
Xerox are famous, but the
Mhm.
problem Kleenex and Xerox had is the same as the escalator company. Have you ever heard of the escalator company?
No.
No, you haven't because it no longer exists. They had a trademark on escalator and they let their competitors back in the 40s use their
Use
brand
their
name.
name. Yep. So they
And they're a
lost the right
famous
to it.
example of
Mhm.
genericide. And the court said escalator
Mhm.
company sued them. And
Mhm.
the court said, you told your competitors they could use it.
Mhm.
Everybody calls an
Right. So
escalator.
yeah.
They
Mhm.
call these moving stairs
Mhm.
escalators. So the escalator company lost its brand
Mhm.
name. And now you call them escalators. So
Mhm.
that's why Kleenex is like, we do not sell Kleenex. We sell tissues.
Mhm.
And Xerox is like, Xerox came up with the name photocopy
Mhm.
because they didn't want people saying, well, it's a Xerox because they would have committed genericide.
Mhm.
So anyway,
Right.
interesting separate issue. But anyway,
Right.
all that aside,
Well,
I went
but
too deep.
yeah, a business person needs to be thinking about these things because, if you're a small business, you might not care. But if you
Right.
want to be a bigger business doing, business in multiple locations, things like
Well, I
that.
would argue that too. I would
Ah,
argue if you're a small business, the most important thing you own, and
is
I'm an
your
IP
name.
lawyer, is your IP.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
your brand. I
Mm-hmm.
could open up a podcast tomorrow and call it the Business Power Minute. But
Mm-hmm.
if I use the Business Power Hour, I've got 987 episodes and all this goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
It's your IP. If you're an author,
Right.
it's your text. But if
Mm-hmm.
it's your brand. It's your
Mm-hmm.
brand or your patent. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
IP is the most valuable thing any
Mm-hmm.
business owns
Right.
because anybody can open up McDonald's
Mm-hmm.
and call it Bob's Burgers and serve
Mm-hmm.
the exact same crap that
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's slings exactly the
I
same
like
without
McDonald's.
those
Don't
golden
call it crap.
arches. Yeah, whatever. The point
Mm-hmm.
is, but nobody's going to go in there.
Right.
But millions of people are going to go into McDonald's
Mm-hmm.
because they know the brand, they know what it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Right.
There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
value in that. I mean, why do you think in Coming to America, McDowell's, it
Mm-hmm.
just happened to be a
Right.
coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Right. Well,
that's my
and I also trademarked the name because I didn't want someone else doing it and then
right.
coming back to me and saying you got to take everything down.
That's true. Now, the good
Mhm.
news for you is that use in commerce in the United States is
Mhm.
king. So if
Mhm.
you start using it first and
Mhm.
ubiquitously,
Right.
even if they file after you started using
Mhm.
it and they started using it after
Mhm.
you can prevent them.
Mhm.
Now, the problem now with your podcast, you're national, you're all over, it's big. If you're a regional company and they file a trademark and you're in Atlanta and they're in California,
Mhm.
they will have concurrent rights. I'm
Mhm.
going way too deep into trademarks. I'm sorry. This is not
But
what your
no,
show's
to me,
getting.
I think it's very interesting and important because I think it is something that people don't consider. They
Right.
they come up with a name of a podcast, a service that they provide, a product that they provide, a company name, and they don't stop to think, I need to protect it. And
So,
I think that's the thing.
and let me give you the easiest thing you can do. Step one, for free, use Google Foo, go
Mm-hmm.
to Google, type the name of what you want to use as your
Mm-hmm.
business name, put a space, and then type in what you do,
Mhm.
like Mrs. Vicky's space potato chips,
Mhm.
and you're, oh crap, somebody has that name.
Mhm.
Or even if there's a Mrs. Vicky's pretzels, you can't sell potato chips, the same consumer marketplace.
Right.
Get a sense of how
Mhm.
unique your trademark
Mhm.
is,
Right.
and then go to a lawyer.
Mhm.
Or we have a small business and inventor hub
Mhm.
that literally you can file a trademark with a lawyer from a big
Mhm.
firm, pennies. Well, not quite
Mhm.
pennies, but like very little
Mhm.
dollars, and you
Right.
still get into the big firm trademark system.
Mhm.
And that's the dbllawyers.com/hub.
Mm.
So people, patents, trademarks, copyrights, inexpensive way to
Mhm.
do it if you're a small business. Check out our hub.
Right. And it's just important to protect yourself. I mean, you don't want somebody coming in saying you got to shut your doors.
Well, and think about patents. If
Mhm.
you show somebody your invention
Mhm.
and you have filed a patent, it is now in the public domain and
Right.
anyone can use it.
Mhm.
So patents are a huge deal too. The other thing to remember about all this intellectual property, with the exception possibly of trade secrets, is
Mhm.
it's all territorial.
Mm.
So you do not have any trademark or patent rights in Canada or
Right.
Mexico or the
Mhm.
UK because you file here. Somebody can see your awesome business power hour.
Mhm.
And if you have not filed a foreign
They could have the
application,
British version.
they could have the business power hour brought to
Mhm.
you by Ulster Cook. Yeah, they could do whatever. Or they could do it in Canada. I mean, the
Mhm.
problem is they can't advertise it here. You can stop
Mhm.
them here, but they can do it.
Right.
So you have to remember that, and especially if you're selling overseas or
Mhm.
that's part of your marketplace,
Mhm.
you've got to protect yourself in every country you want to be in.
Right.
So and
So do
we do
other
that in
I'm
every country.
okay, so and that was going to be my question was, so there is a process in other countries to protect your intellectual property.
It's even better. So for both patents and trademarks, there are treaties. We, the
Ah.
United States, are a signatory to the Madrid Protocol, which is for trademarks.
Mhm.
So we can file through the World Intellectual Property Organization a
Mhm.
single trademark application
Ah.
designating member countries.
Mhm.
And pretty much every country is a member.
Mhm.
Middle Eastern countries, a few are not
Eh.
because they have very complex processes involved.
Mhm.
Approval by imams. Like I won't even go to what it is.
Right. Yeah. Mhm.
And we have counsel there that does there because it's expensive and hard.
Mhm.
And some South American countries are not members because they can't meet the requirements of the treaty in
Mhm.
terms of timing.
Right.
But something like 200 something countries, Mexico,
Mhm.
Canada, UK, all
The
of the
big guys
EU,
that you're going to care about.
Australia, China, I don't know if you
Mhm.
care about China or Russia, but all of them are
Mhm.
members.
Mhm.
Some of and most of Africa, believe it or not, is a member.
Mhm.
So that's a fairly straightforward process.
Mhm.
They get examined individually in each country, and you pay a filing fee for each country. Patent, same thing. We
Mhm.
have something called the Patent Cooperation Treaty,
Mhm.
and that allows you to file sort of what's called a PCT application
Mhm.
and designate all the countries in the world that are signatories, which is
Mhm.
even more than Madrid. It's everybody
Mhm.
basically. Then, after a certain period of time, you can designate which countries you want to examine and approve your patent individually.
Mhm.
And then you have to kind of get it issued in each country, just like a
Mhm.
trademark, but it's all through this PCT
Mhm.
treaty. So there
I
are
love it.
good, easy methods. Now,
Mhm.
copyright, remember, or you probably don't know this, the United States is sort of unique. We have a registration process
Mhm.
and we have a really tough statute that has fee shifting, all this good stuff. And you
Mhm.
see copyright lawsuits. Most countries don't have that.
Mhm.
They have, and we have this too. It's called the Berne Convention from
Mhm.
Switzerland, 1989, which is essentially a convention that says if you make something in the UK, you write a book, you own that in the US, you own that in Germany, you own it everywhere, even without, but those countries
Mhm.
don't have registration, but you
Mhm.
have rights there and you can
Mhm.
sue people there. But in the US, you have to file a registration to be able to bring a suit.
Mhm.
So, and Germany has a similar process. Most
Mhm.
other countries do not.
Right.
So,
You
for
know, and
whatever it's worth.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't take a lot to research this, and I think that's the important thing. But we've only got, oh my gosh, we've only got about 10 minutes left. And I want to talk about the big elephant that is now in the room, especially regarding a lot of this, and that's
Yeah,
AI. You know,
sure.
and I love AI. I'm using it more and more. I actually have the paid version of Chat GPT because I use it
Yeah.
that much. But like earlier today, I used it to write a memo to to the nonprofit organization that I sit on the
Sure.
board. And so I said, hey, and it's funny. I have a friend who teaches how to use Chat GPT, and she said, if you're nice and polite to it, it works better. It's the funniest thing. And so I said, good morning, how are you? And all this stupid stuff, but it really does seem to give better answers. But and I said, I need to write a memo about this, and this. and it went boogity, boogity, boogity and spit it back
Right.
out.
Yeah.
And, and is, so for the most part, it was not my words. It was Chat GPT words.
Correct.
Now we're having people who are clearly writing term papers, who are writing books, who are doing all of those things using technology. What happens with intellectual property when you have used something like AI to create what you're doing? Digital images would be another great thing. We use
different things in different places. So I'll tell you, in the United States, the US Copyright Office has rejected anything created by AI. So there's a very famous case about a manga. I don't know if you know what that is, but they're comic books with, it's a Japanese art form of really, I don't know, if you have kids, but my daughter was really into it. But anyway, comic books. She wrote a comic book, and all of the text in the comic book she wrote, but she had put down that she used AI to generate the images in the comic book. And the US Copyright Office gave her copyright registration on the text, but denied her registration of anything created with AI. The US Patent Office says that AI can't own a patent, and AI cannot take an inventive step. A human must take the inventive step, but you can use AI to develop something to, as long as a human was involved in the inventive step. Now, the interesting question comes into ownership. So who owns whatever's created by AI?
Right. Is it who owns Chat GPT, or is it me?
Well, there's more. Is it the person who put the prompt in? Is it the company that owns Chat GPT? Or is it, if it's an amalgamation of pieces of art, there's a lot of
Is it
lawsuits
all
about
of
this in
theirs?
copyright. Is it Taylor Swift and, I don't know, Drake, whose music you mashed together using Chat GPT? I mean, do they own that? Is it a derivative work of their copyright? So there's a lot of questions around that that haven't really been resolved. Right now, the US is saying nobody owns it because we're not considering it intellectual property. They can't create anything, which is interesting because AI, I feel, is getting more intelligent every week. And we're not at the point, the difference between a general AI and we're dealing with a narrow AI still, right? But we are headed towards the point where there will be something closer to a general AI, and it's getting pretty inventive. I used Chat GPT, to your point. We're redoing our basement, and I want to do this TV thing with a wine fridge and all this. And I said, create this for me. And it made a beautiful picture.
Cool.
And then I said, make the wine fridge twice as tall, change the cabinets to brown, this shade from this company, and add a bar fridge on the left. And then I said, and then I changed the size, and it just kept spitting out a different version of the picture. And it was incredible. It's like artist quality rendering that you would pay somebody to make to show your build. And I did it in, like, I don't know, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. So it is an incredible tool. I don't think it's going to replace people. And I will tell you, as a law firm, we've put huge guardrails around it because you've heard of hallucinations. Large language models hallucinate.
Right.
And when you ask it for legal stuff, it
doesn't know if it's real or not, true or not.
Yes,
it's pulling in the data.
It's also giving you things that are not, it'll say a source for this concept is the EEOC or something. I was looking up something about a definition of a conditional offer today. I was just trying to find it anywhere. I'd gone to Lexis already, or Lexis subscription. I couldn't find any case. So I was like, all right, put it in ChatGPT. It's like ChatGPT is like, no problem. Here are 3 resources that say what a conditional offer is defined as in this state that I was looking in. And I went to each site to read it because we can't really use ChatGPT.
You got to verify it. Yes.
It wasn't there. I was like, how did you get that from this ChatGPT? How did you do this?
So, and it said, I don't know. It's because you didn't ask it politely. See, that was it.
I said, provide sources and links directly to the information I'm requesting, something like that. And it's like, here you go. And it just was wrong. So that's a little scary.
Yeah.
And we use GPT checkers for our associates' blogs. And Google penalizes you if you're using a chat bot writer because it can detect that. So, and my son's school has kicked people out for using it. They check every paper with these checkers, and they've kicked a couple kids out for using, I don't know if it's chat or Claude or whatever.
Right.
There's a bunch.
Well, and of course, plagiarism has existed for years. It used to be, in my day, we had the old Encyclopedia Britannica. Right. And, and of course, our teachers were smart enough to go, this 8th grader did not write that. And now, of course, you have the programs where you take it and you put it in and you say, can you find this somewhere else? And it goes boogity boogity. That's the technical term. You got to remember that. Boogity boogity. And it says, yes, we found this in 15 other locations. Well, yeah, then it's clearly plagiarized. But it was funny. I saw a story about, and I don't know if it's the Atlanta School District or something, along that line, but we're talking about the fact that now kids have to actually do their work in the classroom. So
wow.
I know. So that way, the teachers are able to see it. And they're writing it out because many schools now are banning cell phones. And I think a combination is what is best. Like I said, I wrote this memo today. Could I have done it on my own? Sure. But it took me 20 seconds to have Chat GPT do it. I tweaked it, I kind of rearranged a little bit, and I was done. To me, it's just like if I had written it and had somebody else review it. But I can also understand why, if say you are a graphic artist, an architect, all of those various things, why you're thinking, oh, this could be scary.
Well, it's still super useful though. You can use it as a tool if you're one of those things. What people, and my law partner said this at our annual meeting, which was semi-annual meeting last week, when he did a session on AI, and he said, people are paying you for your brain and your expertise.
Right.
So you can't rely on artificial intelligence. That's what they're paying you for. And that's the magic of being a lawyer. And it really is. It's the magic of all of our professions.
Right.
There are some professions, I know copywriters are worried. People who write ad copy, like visit the Power Hour now for, the best podcast.
Oh yeah.
Right? You can drop that in Chat GPT and ask them for the best version of an SEO statement about your podcast.
And it will give you.
Yes. And that is a useful, valid use. And those people are maybe a little bit out of business. But,
or I tell it, like I will say, I need to do a post about this, Facebook and LinkedIn. And it will give me a different paragraph for each one. And again, could I do it? Sure. But why? It comes back to what we were saying at the very start. Use your resources in the best possible way.
I'll tell you what I've used it a lot for on LinkedIn. There's a feature now where you'll see a post from somebody, a long article, and you can say, tell me more about this. On LinkedIn, they have this AI thing, and I use it all the time to get a quick summary, like, whatever the article is. It's crazy useful. We're going to see more of it. I'm sure we're going to see AI betting on sports events. Already happening, guaranteed. We're going to see AI predicting. I don't know if you watch Wimbledon or any of the Master or any of the Grand Slams, but watching AI predicts like who's going to win by percentage and like how many shots. It's crazy, right? So we're creating a lot of data and a lot of interesting challenges for lawyers. And I think, I've said this before, we have to rewrite a bunch of laws. So not around intellectual property, but around cyber protection and piracy and computer. There's a lot of laws that have to change and that have to be thought about intelligently. And if we're going to keep electing people in their mid 80s, no offense, it's hard. Right.
Yeah.
It's hard.
You got to understand the tech. I don't understand it well enough to be able to say much. But you ask a 30-year-old and they're going to know exactly what to say. But again, you're getting what you paid for. But yeah. Well, oh my gosh, Tom, this has been so much fun. I have to have you on again because we just barely scratched the surface on all sorts of things we could talk about. But tell us, how do they find Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig, and what are the services that you provide?
Yeah, so dbllawyers.com, Delta Bravo Lima Lima, Alpha Whiskey Yankee Echo Romeo Sierra.
You are a former Army dude.
I am a former Army dude. Sorry. DBL, 2 L's in the middle, lawyers.com. And look, go to our Inventors Hub, our small business hub for trademarks and patents. That's a great place. It's that domain/hub. You can find us there. We are an IP firm principally, a government contracts firm, M&A, and some real estate stuff. So leasing and franchise stuff, but mostly patents, copyrights, trademarks, disputes, all that happy stuff. We've been doing it for a few decades. Most of my partners have been doing it for 20 to 30 years. And we're all over the country, and we can handle IP in the entire universe. I say that because as far as we know, it's
You
just
never know. Those Martians might need this.
someday we'll be doing Moon and Mars IP. I
Mhm.
guarantee. When
Mhm.
it happens, we'll be there. And I have a partner who does space law and space treaty stuff.
I love it.
Who's
I love it.
dabbles. Yeah, it's kind of
Mhm.
weird. But it is a thing. It'll be a thing.
Mhm.
So that's us. And reach out anytime. If
Very
you're
cool.
up for Aldi for the Beagle Club, the
Yes.
Beagle
Mhm.
Word, let me know. Happy to. I literally am, 10 minutes from you. So
Oh yeah, coffee time, coffee time.
we'll grab coffee.
But
Common
yeah,
ground.
yeah, this really, as I said, this has been so interesting, and we do have to discuss this more. And more importantly, I think we need to because there's going to be things that change and happen, and so we need to bring people up to date and say, okay, this is now what's going on, and so I think it would be great to have you on again. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
My final thoughts to every human everywhere is do what you love or you will die. And that has been my personal mantra moving through life. Yes, I quit being a lawyer and enlisted in the Army as a private, but you had to find something you love. And I'm not saying I love that. I didn't necessarily love being a private, so I went to OCS. But do what you love.
I love it.
That's it. So that's trite, but that's what
No,
I have.
well,
Charge of Light Brigade.
life's too
600.
short, right?
Yeah, it is.
So I am Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Thomas Dunlap, a managing partner of Dunlap Bennett and Ludwig. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.